Hello, this is Ben Television News Roundup, a compilation of major stories in the week ending. I'm Tunde Alabi, and thank you for being part of the program today. Britain has marked the 10th anniversary of the 7/7 terrorist attack on London that saw 52 people killed in the tragic incident. 52 people were killed and several others were injured on the morning of 7th July 2005 when 4 bombs were detonated in succession on tube trains and bus number 30. Tony Blair, the then Prime Minister, and the current Prime Minister David Cameron and London Mayor Boris Johnson have all pushed Britain on how it has overcome the threat of 7/7 bombings.
I was leading the global summit of the main countries in the world at Gleneagles in Scotland. We'd literally just had the news about the Olympic bid and winning the Olympics for London, so there was a general state of euphoria. And then I remember having a meeting about the summit with the Chinese president and being passed a note in the course of that meeting saying that there'd been incidents on the London Underground and that I should step out of the meeting, and which I then did and started to take calls. And then as the minutes progressed, it became pretty obvious quickly that this was a terrorist attack. And at that time, we didn't know the full extent of it, but as the morning went on, it became clear there were multiple casualties. And look, at the time, the single most important thing is that you think as to how you can deal with the situation, right? So this is the first thing that you're talking about. Now, later, as time goes on, you're able to reflect. I think it's very important to understand that the probable leader of the 7/7 attacks was someone who was first in the training camp in the middle of 2001, right, before 9/11. The difficulty is that there will always be reasons and excuses that people use for terrorism. And you have countries like France today that's the subject of terrorism, or Norway, or Belgium, or Tunisia, or Kuwait, or countries across Africa, none of whom had anything to do with British or American foreign policy, and yet whose citizens come under this type of violent and indiscriminate killing. So, I think in the end, the responsibility has got to lie with the people who carry this out and those who encourage them.
This is one of those days where everybody remembers exactly where they were when they heard the news. And it's a day when we recall the incredible resolve and resolution of Londoners and the United Kingdom. A day when we remember the threat that we still face. But above all, it's a day when we think of the grace and the dignity of the victims' families for all they've been through. And we honour the memory of those victims and all those that were lost 10 years ago.
Well, I think everybody's thoughts are very much with the survivors, their families, obviously those who look back on the loss of those 52 lives with a great deal of pain. But I think the great thing about London 10 years after the bombings is that, those terrorists did not change the city in the way that they thought that they would. And no matter how much pain and how many wounds that they gave, they didn't win. So, London remains, the most dynamic, the most cosmopolitan. It's the capital of the world. The values of the city haven't remotely changed. But as you rightly say, there remains a serious threat. There are probably, in the low thousands of people that we have to monitor, that we have to observe. And that's a very serious risk the whole time.
Europe has remained a target for terrorist attack as more people from the continent join terrorist organization ISIS. Still on the United Kingdom, the Chancellor George Osborne has described the latest budget as the best to take Britain out of its current debt. The Chancellor said that the budget offers the country a new contract.
It is a budget that puts security first. It's a budget that recognises the hard work and the sacrifice of the British people over the past 5 years and says we will not put that at risk. We have a job to do and we're here to get on with it. This will be a budget for working people. Yeah. A budget that sets out a plan for Britain for the next 5 years to keep moving us from a low-wage, high tax, high welfare economy to the higher wage, lower tax, lower welfare country we intend to create. This is the new settlement. From a one-nation government, this is a one-nation budget that takes the necessary steps and follows a sensible path for the benefit of the whole United Kingdom. And this is a Conservative budget that can only be delivered because the British people trusted us to finish the job. Because they know that the only way to have a strong NHS, strong schools and a strong defence is to build a strong economy, and that's how we're elected, and that is exactly what we're now going to do. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, the British economy I report on today is fundamentally stronger than it was 5 years ago. We're growing faster than any other major advanced economy. Our businesses have created 2 million more jobs. Living standards are rising strongly. Our long-term economic plan is working. But the greatest mistake this country could make would be to think all our problems are solved. You only have to look at the crisis unfolding in Greece as I speak to realise that if a country is not in control of its borrowing, the borrowing takes control of the country. Britain still spends too much, it borrows too much, and our weak productivity shows we don't train enough or build enough or invest enough. This we are determined to change. We will be bold in transforming education, bold in reforming welfare, bold in delivering infrastructure, bold in building the Northern Powerhouse. We will be bold in backing the aspirations of working people. This is a big budget for a country with big ambitions. It's a budget that sets the way to secure Britain's future.
The Chancellor announced the removal of cap on students' admission to universities. He also said that students' maintenance grants will now become loans.
The education reforms we started in the last Parliament have begun to address this problem, and we're going further in this Parliament by tackling the coasting schools that simply aren't good enough. We've already doubled the number of apprenticeships to 2 million. Now we're committed to 3 million more. To fund these apprenticeships and make sure they're of high quality, we have to confront this truth. While many firms do a brilliant job training their workforces, there are too many large companies who leave the training to others and take a free ride on the system. So we are going to take a radical and frankly long overdue approach. We're going to introduce an apprenticeship levy on all large firms. Firms that offer apprenticeships can get back more than they put in. Britain's great businesses training up the next generation, 3 million more apprenticeships with the security that will bring. The money will be directly controlled by employers, and we'll work with businesses on how to do this. It's exactly the sort of bold step we need to take if Britain is going to raise its game. Next, we've got to secure the success of our university sector, which is one of the jewels in the crown of the British economy. Now, when we reformed student funding in the last Parliament, we were told by those who so opportunistically opposed us that it would put people from low-income backgrounds off from going to university. Instead, we now see a record number of these students applying and succeeding. It is a triumph of progressive reform. And now we are removing the artificial cap on student numbers so we don't have to turn away people from our universities who want to go and who have the right grades. But we can't afford to do this unless we tackle the cost of student maintenance grants that is set to almost double to £3 billion over this decade. There's also a basic unfairness of asking taxpayers to fund the grants of people who are likely to earn a lot more than them. Now, the last Labour government actually abolished these grants before reintroducing them, and now they've become unaffordable. If we don't tackle this problem, then our universities will become underfunded and our students won't get places, and I'm not prepared to let that happen. So from 2016-17 academic year, we will replace maintenance grants with loans for new students, loans that only have to be paid back once they earn over £21,000 a year. And to ensure university is affordable to all students from all backgrounds, we'll increase the maintenance loan available to £8,200, the highest amount of support ever provided. To ensure our university system is sustainable, we'll consult on freezing the loan repayment threshold for 5 years and will link the student fee cap to inflation for those institutions that can show they offer high-quality teaching, and will open the whole sector to new entrants who can deliver the highest standards. It's a major set of reforms to make sure Britain continues to have the best universities in the world. It is fair to students, fair to taxpayers, and vital to secure our long-term economic future.
Also, as part of government efforts to support potential homeowners, the Chancellor said that the government Help to Buy scheme will receive more boost.
Another key to raising the productivity of our country is building more homes and creating a fairer property market. This is a government that is unwavering in its support for home ownership. And that's why we're introducing the new Help to Buy ISA this autumn. That's why we're giving housing association tenants the right to buy. And that's why we'll set out further planning reforms on Friday. Today I set out 3 important changes that will address unfairnesses in our taxation of property and put the security of home ownership first. First, we will create a more level playing field between those buying a home to let and those who are buying a home to live in. Buy-to-let landlords have a huge advantage in the market as they can offset their mortgage interest payments against their income, whereas home buyers cannot. And the better off the landlord, the more tax relief they get. For the wealthiest, every pound of mortgage interest costs they incur, they get 45p back from the taxpayer. All this has contributed to the rapid growth in buy-to-let properties, which now account for over 15% of new mortgages, something the Bank of England warned us last week could pose a risk to our financial stability. So we will act, but we will act in a proportionate and gradual way, because I know that many hard-working people who've saved and invested in property depend on the rental income they get. So we will retain mortgage interest relief on residential property, but we will now restrict it to the basic rate of income tax. And to help people adjust, we will phase in the withdrawal of the higher rate reliefs over a 4-year period and only start withdrawal in April 2017. Second, the rent-a-room relief is designed to help homeowners who rent out a room in their home. It's a good scheme, particularly in a world where more and more people are renting out rooms online, but the relief has been frozen at £4,250 for 18 years. Next year, we will raise it to £7,500. The third change fulfills a long-standing promise I made and a promise I was unable to fulfil in coalition. The left will never understand this, but we on this side know that the wish to pass something on to your children is about the most basic human and natural aspiration there is. Inheritance tax was designed to be paid by the very rich, yet today there are more families pulled into the inheritance tax net than ever before, and the number is set to double over the next 5 years. It's not fair, and we will act. From 2017, we will phase in a new £175,000 allowance for your home when you leave it to your children or grandchildren. It sits on top of the existing £325,000 threshold, which will be fixed until the end of 2020-2021. Both allowances can be transferred to your spouse or partner, and from today, we will make sure that those who choose to downsize do not lose any of the allowance from the property they used to own. But we will taper the relief away for estates worth more than £2 million. The result for families in this is this: you can pass on up to £1 million onto your children free of inheritance tax. Mr. Deputy Speaker, no more inheritance tax on family homes, aspiration supported, the tax paid only by the rich, the security of home ownership restored, promise made, promise delivered.
However, the Institute of Fiscal Studies has suggested that 13 million UK families will be worse off at the end of the day based on the new budget. Now to Africa. U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice has criticized South Sudan government for the country's failure as it marks its 4th independence anniversary. The U.S. senior official called for immediate establishment of transitional government in order to move the country forward away from the path of war to prosperity.
I want to convey my greetings and that of President Obama and the United States of America to you, the people of South Sudan, on the occasion of the 4th anniversary of your hard-won independence. I remember so vividly the joy the world felt 4 years ago, welcoming South Sudan into the community of nations. I remember the pride I personally felt standing in that huge crowd in Juba with my 13-year-old son and the people of South Sudan to celebrate the end of a decades-long civil war and the birth of the world's newest nation. I remember the hope and the unity of that day, the promise of a new beginning for you who had suffered so much and persevered for so long. 4 years later, those happy memories are a horrifying reminder of all that has been lost. It breaks my heart to see what South Sudan has become today. Massive and widespread violence has returned. Human rights abuses are rampant. The government and rebels are committing appalling crimes against innocent women, children, and the elderly. President Kiir and Riek Machar and their cronies are personally responsible for this new war and self-inflicted disaster. And only leaders on both sides can end this violence. Yet, President Kiir and Riek Machar would rather haggle over personal power and wealth than agree on solutions. Meanwhile, you, the people of South Sudan, continue to suffer. Almost half of South Sudan's population is now dependent on the international community for its very survival, and more than 2 million people have been displaced from their homes. Over the past 19 months, the government has abdicated its responsibilities, failed to protect its citizens, and squandered its legitimacy. Instead of negotiating a resolution to the conflict, it has subverted democracy and unilaterally extended its mandate. As the violence drags on, the conflict not only scars the lives of innocent South Sudanese, it threatens to destabilize the wider region. Through all these challenges, your neighbors, our regional partners, have gone to great lengths to try to bring the warring parties together and forge an end to this conflict. The United States continues to support these efforts. The path ahead is clear. Violence will not bring about a solution. The South Sudanese parties must establish immediately a transitional government that can serve with legitimacy and represent the needs of the people of South Sudan. Before independence, when the war was at its height, I visited with people across your country. In Mar el-Bai, in Rumbek, in Louis, I heard people describe how war was devastating their lives and tearing apart their families. Ordinary people had endured years of suffering and uncertainty, but they still strove to forge a better future for their children. That's the choice the leaders of South Sudan must make now. The United States will not abandon the people of South Sudan and their right to live freely and at peace in their own country. We will continue to stand with all those who dream of a better tomorrow. The United States will continue to work hard to help you achieve lasting peace and justice. We will hold accountable those who abuse the people of South Sudan. And the United States, along with the international community, will punish those determined to drive South Sudan into the abyss. May God bless your young country and the people of South Sudan.
South Sudan has been involved in civil wars that have killed many and displaced millions of people in recent times. And with that story on South Sudan, we conclude the news roundup for this week. Thank you for being part of it. I'm Tunde Alabi, and I'll see you again. Have a very good weekend. Bye.
Are you planning a trip to Lagos anytime soon? Then make it a date with us at Dreamland Luxury Suites. Dreamland Luxury Suites is an icon in the city of Lagos, offering luxury at its most resplendent. Our executive rooms are fitted with classic Italian sofa seats, providing a truly comfortable stay away from home. We are located just 10 minutes away from the international airport in Lagos. Our facility is a perfect match to accommodate visitors. Enjoy the best of African and continental dishes. Experience fullness of hospitality like never before in an atmosphere of imperial splendor at affordable rate. Dreamland Luxury Suites. Luxury with comfort and privacy is our promise.
I say and do.